Hello and welcome to When Grooms Get Engaged, the podcast about a guy's perspective to wedding planning from two guys that are currently trying to survive their own. I'm Steve.
And I'm Chris. And each week we will talk about how we navigated a different part of the wedding planning journey, what we learned in the process, and what maybe we wish we had done differently. So Steve, what are we talking about this week and why are stamps so expensive?
Chris, we're talking about stationery, and stamps are, you know the saying, death by like a million paper cuts or whatever? I'm pretty sure whoever came up with it was mailing out wedding invites. Because stamps, 50 cents here, 45 cents there, $1 there, whatever. But all of a sudden, when you're mailing 100 of them multiple times, it adds up to so much money. Yep. So, Chris, today we are talking about stationery. And Chris, I don't know about you, but in my budget, I imagine this was like $100, 500 at most. And it ballooned way more than that when all was said and done. Like,
I cannot wait. I cannot wait to hear, because we just got your invitation and man, it was a beautiful thing. It was a piece of art.
Oh, Chris, that's
but all I saw was dollar signs.
Yes. So we're gonna get to that. But before you're making these decisions and spending this money, we kind of need to talk about customary timelines. So Chris, before invitations went out, you got to send out save the dates.
Save the dates.
Mm-hmm. That's so people know a wedding is happening. You don't want to invite someone 2 months before your wedding. And I was looking this up on Zola or The Knot, I forget where. And what they're recommending is that for destination weddings, you want to give people 8 to 12 months. So that's when you should be sending out save the dates. And for local weddings, 6 to 8 months before. So, still a good amount of time, but a little bit less.
Yeah, I think we fell into that rough timeline for when we sent our save the dates. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Obviously, for international weddings, you have to allow people more time to plan that out, get their affairs in order, and just figure out vacation or PTO that they might have to take to see if they can even go. So I think that makes a lot of sense, and giving them that courtesy is more likely to make them show up.
Yeah, exactly. And Chris, with your save the dates, how much information did you guys have on it?
We kept it very simple. We tried to have an aesthetic that kind of matched what our venue was going to be, kind of a modern Art Deco kind of style. Obviously had our names and our date and the location. But that was about it. I think we also had a link to our website on our save the date. We had it up and running by that point. And that was kind of what we were playing with, was making sure that our website kind of had a lot of the information we wanted on it before we sent out the save the date, because we wanted to make sure that those things kind of went together.
Chris, that is great foreshadowing, because next week's episode is going to be on the website. And that's a good point. If you're going to be sending out save the dates, right, let's assume people get them 2 to 3 days after you mail them at the fastest. You want your website to be up and running by the time someone gets that in their hand. Because the save the date, Chris, same thing for ours. Like, there was not a lot of information on there. It was literally just hey, we're getting married here. You're invited. Go to a website for more information. So you definitely kind of want to plan the save the date in conjunction with the bulk of your website being up and running. So that's definitely a great call out.
One other thing I would say that people out there might want to also think about is that a lot of couples will use their engagement photos for their save the dates. So if that's something you want to do, you're going to obviously have to make sure that you're factoring in your engagement shoot with enough time to then send out the save the dates. So if you want to use those pictures, make sure you're thinking about that.
Yeah. No, that's actually, we didn't even talk about engagement pictures or any of that thing, but that's a really good call out as well. What I've noticed is that a lot of people do use their engagement photos for the save the dates, and then for the actual invites, I haven't really seen very many actual photos of the couples. It's more of like maybe a logo, like you mentioned, kind of the vibe you're trying to go for the wedding. Because I know, Chris, with yours, you guys had like bold gold lettering. I believe you used some green and black. So like it was a very elegant, and like bold is not the right word, but like strong colors. Like I actually really liked your guys' invitations, the colors you went with.
I appreciate that. I know my partner definitely spent a lot of time, long hours and revisions on it. And, I wasn't as much help as I should have been, but she did an amazing job in designing those and coming to me with designs. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Call out there. Thank you.
No, they look really nice. They're very striking. You definitely notice them. But this is a good topic to talk about. You got to decide, are you going to design these yourself or are you going to get a designer?
Absolutely.
And Chris, like, your fiance did a great job, but I have seen what it takes to design these, and there are so many choices to go through. So many choices that are also very similar, but just slightly different. So you will just be scrolling through pages of pages of pages of pages of layouts. And I believe for our save the dates, we went with the Knot. Did you guys do the Knot as well, or did you do Zola?
We used a different company actually to design our save the dates. But I mean, there's a lot of great tools out there. So even if you're not a graphic designer, you can use like Canva is one that you can really use that has a lot of great templates and design options. So, there's a lot of tools out there that you can use to find the right look. You don't necessarily have to go through the Knot or Zola, but if you choose a theme on your wedding website, again, some foreshadowing, those websites allow you to use that same theme for your save the dates and invitations. So you kind of have a seamless look. So if that's important to you, you might want to go that route.
Yeah, and they make it really easy to just kind of have it all in one shop. So the way these programs work is you kind of go in, you design your invite, and then you can choose to print it out and mail it to you. But then you print it out with the actual invite itself, maybe an envelope with the address of who you're sending it out to, as well as your return address. And then from there, you can just kind of go wild. Thick paper, thin paper, foil lettering, right? Ribbons, bands. You can kind of just keep adding embellishments to your heart's content with these things. And that's where it just takes so much time. And that's where the costs kind of start to spiral a little bit.
Yeah, I think once you start the process, you can definitely go down a rabbit hole and start adding all this gold foil, gold leaf, and just like dazzle it up a lot. But that obviously is going to add a lot to the cost. So, and I think people should remember that at the end of the day, obviously this is your wedding. It's very important to you. A lot of people are going to look at it, say, huh, and then put it up on their fridge or, make a note, or it's just going to sit on a coffee table or whatever. Right. So, just know, like, obviously put work into it, take pride in it, have some fun with it. But at the end of the day, just know that it's kind of like a background piece or kind of not thought much of after, it's open.
Yeah. And be prepared for that. Like, it sounds like, Chris, your fiance put a lot of work into it. I know my fiance put a lot of work into our save the dates as well. And I think they turned out great. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, after the wedding's over, they are going to get tossed. But let's maybe kind of go over what you can expect to pay for these things. So, Chris, I know you guys didn't go with the Knot or Zola, but I know for ours, we had 100 save the dates. And we had a little bit of foil lettering, which bumped up the price a little bit. And then we also had envelopes with like people's names on them and our address. And I think we had like some coupon code for like 20% off, which this seems like they're always doing. And that still ended up costing us like $300-400. I got the exact amount.
Yeah, that seems right. Yep.
Yeah, that's like the average, right? That you can expect for this many invites, but that's the starting point. Because from there, you just keep going up.
Yeah, you can really get you can really spend a lot of like hidden dollars in these things, right? Like then they're always advertising more, add this, add that, to get you to spend more. So, I think we were in that rough ballpark for our total cost for the save the dates. We obviously went with an option where they were also printing out all of the envelopes with the addresses on them. So all we had to do was, receive them, open them up, stuff the save the date into the envelope, seal it up, and then add a stamp on there and send them off. So it did make things a little bit easier. And if you can spend the, extra little money to kind of get that all in one kind of deal, I would recommend it because it made it super easy.
Yeah. And also one thing to note is when you are getting the envelopes and you have to stuff them and close them, there's like a glue stick looking thing where you don't have to like lick the envelopes. Which if you're licking, 5 envelopes, it's fine. But by like the 10th, 15th one, your tongue gets dry, like who knows, you might get a paper cut on your tongue. Like that sounds horrible. If you're going to be doing 100 of them, just buy one of those at Walgreens or CVS. It'll save yourself just some headache, just some annoyance.
Yeah, I ended up using like a little used like a kitchen sponge and just wet it a little bit and used that to kind of like wet the sticky part of the envelope to seal it up. So I wasn't licking 120 envelopes.
Oh, that's actually a good idea. I didn't even think about that. But yeah, that's just something you're gonna have to do, and then you're gonna have to buy stamps. So buy a lot of forever stamps because especially lately, the post office has been raising the price of a stamp literally like every
6 months.
It's insane. I think they've taken price like 3 times last year, and they're already taken at least once this year. I forgot the exact amount of times, but it may not seem like a lot, a couple cents here, a couple cents there, but again, when you're mailing out hundreds of invites multiple times, those couple cents add up. And especially if you're going to mail out invites, asking people to mail you back a response with a pre-stamped envelope, you're essentially paying it twice, So buy forever stamps. Chris, I know we bought them from Costco, the greatest store on earth, obviously.
Good call. I didn't think about Costco. Did you have a nice variety there?
I'm trying to remember. I think they were tulips. I don't know if the tulips were at Costco or we got them specifically from the post office. I don't recall. I mean, there's not a lot of variety, but it's like the cheapest single source of stamps. You can also get them at the postoffice.com, USPS.com, but they have to be delivered to you. But I think the price there is also comparable. It just depends how much time you have to wait. But definitely get more stamps than you think you need. Just trust me on this. And they're good to have. And forever stamps, like it doesn't matter if the price goes up, like your stamp is forever for that 1 ounce.
Yeah. And you're obviously going to be thinking ahead. Obviously, you're doing save the dates, and then you have your wedding invites, and then potentially thank you cards. So, you can stock up now, and then you'll eventually get through them.
Oh, Chris, should we start talking about wedding invites?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's jump in.
So, save the dates are exactly what the name sounds like. You're sending people, hey, we're getting married. Hey, you're going to get an invite on this date, but no information yet. Just save the date. But then you have to send out actual invitations where you will have people actually RSVP. People will have to tell you how many guests, right? If you're getting a +1 or not, make sure to be legible on the invite so there's no confusion. On the actual invites, if you are having food options, you're going to also want them to make that apparent. Another thing is if you're having multiple events, the actual invite will need to have all those listed out so that people know. Chris, I know we talk about embellishments on the save the dates, but the actual invites, that's where you could just really go crazy.
Yeah, so I'll maybe talk about my experience, which is, I think, a little bit different than yours. So we ended up using The Knot, which is hosting our wedding website for our invitations, and I think they came out great. There's a lot of different options you can choose, though. So some wedding invitations, there's like 2, 3, 4 little cards that kind of are all looped in together. Some of them are there's a really cool design where it's like kind of an all-in-one, where like there's some perforated pieces where you can take that piece off so that you have something to hold, and then obviously it just like self-folds back into an envelope that you just seal with your choice of whether you're accepting the RSVP and then your food options. So
that's kind of cool.
I really kind of like those all-in-one designs. They can be a slightly pricier, but not too bad. But I think they're really cool looking and just like a fun idea. I just really like those designs. And I think you brought up a good point too, is make sure you are very specific about who you are inviting, who the invitation is addressed to, whether they get a +1. Otherwise, you might have people showing up that you're not accounting for. You know, people assume, oh, of course, this other person's invited, or of course, my kids are invited, you know. So be very specific on what is your kids' policy and who is invited and who the invitation is addressed to, because that will lead to your total guest count. So just be aware of that. It's a very important piece.
Yeah, and there's multiple ways to do this. What we did is we specifically addressed invites to, you know, who we're inviting. So if it's family, it would be like Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so and family. Mm-hmm. If it's just one person, it would be like Mr. So-and-so, you know? If it was a guest, it would be like Miss So-and-so plus guest. So be very, very specific. And then I've seen people on the RSVP cards, like let's say if you're asking to return them, mm-hmm. it would be like the person humbly accepts or declines, mm-hmm. and that's it. Or it would be like the person and guest humbly accepts or declines, you know, for whatever it is. So when you're sending these out, especially if you're trying to keep your guest list tight and manageable, be as specific as possible, as clear as possible, so that like there's no ambiguity, you know, there's no confusion on who is getting invited, who's not getting invited.
Yeah, and also along with that, obviously they're RSVPing, but they're also likely choosing their meal at that point as well. So it might also be something you want to include if you know your family or friends have like a lot of dietary restrictions or allergies, that you leave like a line available to note any of those so that you can pass that along to your caterer eventually. And then, of course, as you said, you need responses from these people, so you're doing them the courtesy of like pre-stamping their response. So just know that you need a lot of extra stamps because you are going to be stamping their response envelope so that you receive it back. So just be aware of that cost.
Yeah, and just real quick with that, one suggestion I can make, especially if you go with a company like the Knot or Zola, you can ask people to RSVP online. And their websites make it so easy. And Chris, I think you guys also did the same. But online RSVPs, yeah, just do that. Honestly, just do it, because what if your thing gets lost in the mail? You know, like that sounds horrible. It could happen, right? This way, people don't have to like mail it out. Yes, you're still asking them to do something, but it's just all centralized in one place.
We went back and forth on this a lot, but just ended up, through, again, we're using the Knot, but Zola is very similar. You can, on your wedding website, have RSVPs and track everything online, which is great. Very, very convenient, and obviously in real time. So I used Canva just to create a QR code that we added to our invitation so that everyone could just go online and RSVP. I think it's been pretty successful. Obviously, though, like some of the older crowd, you need to kind of handhold a little bit through it, or help them out, or just talk to them on the phone and just manually do it yourself. So, again, if you have a lot of elderly guests, you might have to do a little bit of follow up because they might not, know how to use a QR code and access the website and RSVP online. But I think all in all, we've had a good experience with it.
And I also do kind of want to highlight the QR code. Having it somewhere on your invites or RSVPs is so clutch. It just makes it so easy. People literally take a picture, go in on their phone, and then they're done, right? As opposed to like being like, hey, go to this website, click on this. If you just give people as little like things to do as possible, they're more likely to get it done. So if you can figure out a way to put a QR code on there, Chris, I think that's great. I think it just makes it so easy for people. It just makes it so much more actionable.
Yeah, we were trying to go online and make it a seamless transition and as easy as possible to respond, because obviously you need responses from people. You need to know your headcount. You need to know if people are going to show up. So you just, again, try to make it as easy as possible so that you get the responses you need, whether it's yes or no.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And this is also one of the reasons why actual wedding invites, one of the recommendations is like 3-ish months before the wedding, because not everyone is prompt on responding to RSVPs. You are going to have to, track people down. You are going to have to give time for people to get it, for people to, look at it, for people to comment how pretty it is or whatever, and then forget about it for a week, dilly-dally around their life and be like, oh yeah, now I have to RSVP to this. Like, you don't want to give people like a week to respond. You have to give them some time.
Yeah. Two other things what I would recommend online. Through the Knot, you're also, with the RSVP process, able to add other events that might be surrounding the wedding. So you might have other things going on, other activities that you need a head count for. So you can very specifically, pinpoint certain guests that are invited to those specific events, which is awesome. So like we're doing welcome drinks the day before the wedding. So we're trying to get a head count for that. So all of our guests are going to be invited, but we use the RSVP process to see if people are going to be showing up for that event. And I think the other thing that it's very useful for is that if you're not getting responses, you're able to send out a message to those guests specifically that haven't responded as like a follow-up reminder, right? Instead of like trying to check them off a list and do a spreadsheet, and then whether you email them or text them later, like you're able to use that website to message the guests that have not responded to send them that reminder. So it's convenient that way.
Yeah, that's a very good point. You can, if you're having multiple events, you don't want to send out multiple RSVP cards. With online, you could just kind of, because I know for ours, we're doing a couple as well. And when people put in their name, it literally asks them per event, are you going or not? Because you do need separate counts for each event. You can't just use the same count for everything, because not everyone can make everything. But yeah, that's definitely a very good point. That's what makes it just so much easier to do it online. It saves you such a big headache.
Okay, so obviously I went the self-designed, self-made route. Which route did you go?
Oh, Chris. Yeah, so there's two options, right? You can make them yourself, or you can hire a designer. And we made our save the dates ourselves, but for our actual invites, we worked with our wedding planner in Greece, and she put us in contact with the designer. And we loved his stuff. We thought it was super classy. It looked really nice. So we started the design process with him. And the way this works is you will pay usually a design fee, which doesn't actually include any of the physical invites or any of the physical stationery. It's just for, him or her to design your colors for you. We wanted a logo. That was important for us. And just the general outline. And I believe in our package, it also included place cards, menu cards, a drink, like at the bar, what drinks are available.
Oh,
and
cool.
then, I think there's 3 more things that we can ask him to design for us, depending on what we needed. So we're our rationale is, we're going to Greece. We're going to be doing all these little things. So it's nice to have someone to design it all for us, so it all looks the same. It's all following a theme. It's all following a color. It's all following a font and a pattern and all that stuff. So we paid that cost. And then from there, we had 3 or 4 different meetings with him, or follow-ups on email. So first thing we did is we sent him invites that he's already done before that we liked. And then we sent him the colors that we want to use, and then just kind of gave him a rough idea of what we wanted to see. So then he gave us back designs. We then gave him feedback on that until, you kind of narrow it down. So after we narrowed down the look that we loved, we got everything we needed. That's when we had to finalize the size of the invites and the thickness of the invites and any embellishments of the invites. So when you're working with a European designer, and they give you measurements in centimeters, make sure to convert. That's just the first thing I will say. We're like, he gave it, to be fair, this is not his fault, right? He gave us the measurements. You know, he told us how big they would be, but he gave it to us in centimeters, and we're just like, I mean, I'm sure he's worked with Americans before. He's got to know like how big these are. You know, it's just a American centric worldview that everyone just knows our post office intricacies, apparently. So we didn't question that. The next thing he told us was how thick it was going to be. And there was two thicknesses. It was 450 grams or 900 grams, which I can't tell you exactly what that means, except one is thicker than the other.
I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, no idea. It's just like the thickness of the paper. And I remember asking him like, hey, so is there a price difference? And he's like, no, they're the same price. I'm like, okay, well, obviously we're going to go with a bigger number. Like, duh. You know?
Clearly the better choice.
Yeah, like, come on. And just one thing I will say real quick on thickness of paper. Generally speaking, thicker paper feels more luxurious. You know, it doesn't feel like as flimsy. And it will be one of the first like upgrades you can make on the Knot or Zola. And if you can afford it, I recommend going at least the next thicker paper up than like the base paper. It just feels nicer. So I'm like, yes, of course I want the thicker paper, not knowing whatsoever what the difference between 450 gram paper and 900 gram paper is. Naturally,
double is always better.
Yeah, I mean, come on, if one's good, double is twice as good at least. So we did that. Same price, easy choice. We did foil lettering, you know, which Chris, I know you guys use as well. It looks really nice. It really pops, especially when you catch it in a color. Yeah, it just looks striking. And then we added, what did we add? We added like a vellum wrap, which is, think of it like wax paper over the invite.
First, before you get to that, like the gentle watercolor that you had on your invitation, like that, the background, that was just really cool. It was like a very nice just blend of colors there. So like, again, it was very well done.
Yeah, no, don't get me wrong. It's like, if you go with the designer, this is kind of why you're doing it. So your invites are unique. You know, you're not like using a template. But just know that like, it will cost you more. But you have to ask some questions about how big this thing is. So like, we also added a wax seal to the front and a belly band, which is like a belly band and then a wax seal to keep it all together. So it's kind of like an envelope for the invite, which will then go inside an envelope. Which, when I say it out loud, it sounds ridiculous, you know, because I'm just talking about like further envelopes for the same invite. But like the end result is
classy.
Beautiful. Yeah,
very classy.
It looked great. We also had them like draw us a picture of our venue, you know, so like you see what it looks like.
Also want to point out very, very cool logo design as well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so that's the thing. We're going to use that logo for this like random things we do. We're going to monogram it because like now it'll be our logo going forward, which is also very important to us. We wanted a logo. So then he does all this, right? We give the final send off. We see it in pictures. It looks beautiful. We're like, yes, perfect. It has to be mailed from Greece to the States. And the first thing we were worried about is, shit, how much is this going to cost? Surprisingly, getting stationery mailed from Athens to Chicago was only like $120. So it wasn't that bad. So that's the first thing I will say real quick. If you are thinking about getting a designer, and it definitely, it's not cheap, but I will say that it does give you something unique. Look overseas. Shipping is not that expensive. And a lot of these people know perfect English. So like there's no issues in communicating whatsoever. So definitely don't sleep on a potential overseas vendor for this. But anyway, so we get them.
But that is cheaper than I would have thought.
Yeah, 120. I was like, I was thinking it was gonna be like $500.
Yeah,
you know, or like somewhere around that. But it's like 120 euros, so like $130. You know, whatever. Very reasonable for 100 invites, and it weighed like 20 kilos. I think I forgot the exact weight, but like it was sizable. Anyway, so we get the invites. And I was at work, and my fiance got them, and she's like, "These are huge." I'm like, "What do you mean they're huge?" She's like, "These are huge." I'm like, "There's no way." She's like, "I tried to go to the post office to mail them, and they said that we can't mail these." She was like, "What?" So Chris, we got invites that were 10 inches by 7 inches. That were 3/4 inches thick. And because we got the 900-gram paper, it was literally cardboard that wouldn't bend.
Mm-hmm.
So when this happens, you cannot use stamps. To give you an idea, if you're having something stamped, it's machine read. So it's like fed through like some machine or whatever. And that's why the stamps to ship things out are so cheap, because they're just all automated, read through machine, and it can do like 1 million of them an hour or whatever. But when it's so thick that it doesn't bend and it has to be hand, like delivered, scanned or whatever, it has to be shipped as a package, which all of a sudden,
what did that do to your budget?
Oh my God, dude, it exploded it. So our 3-ounce invite, roughly, which with stamps would have been, I think, like $1.25 or in that ballpark, because it had to be shipped as a package. Now it's going to cost us $5 to $6 per shipping.
Oh no!
Thankfully, I have a PayPal like shipping account, which gives me a slight discount, so it's down to like $4 to $5 per package to ship. But be aware of how big your invites are. And if you go through the Knot or Zola, since it's so standardized, you probably will not have this issue. But if you go through a designer, especially if you go through my hack and you go through a European designer, which will be a little cheaper, do the conversion of the centimeters to inches.
Ask for it in freedom units.
Yeah, please. Freedom inches. You do not want to deal with centimeters. So Chris, we actually got lucky because we got the invites during the same weekend that my sister was having my nephew's baptism. So I could like hand deliver, 30 or 40 of them, which just saved me so much money.
Yeah. A couple $100 right there.
Oh my God, it did. Yeah. The good thing about this though is that since these are packages, they all have tracking numbers. So I can see when people got them. And I'm like, come on, I know you got it. You're not talking about
at least you got that extra level of security. Yeah.
Exactly.
Like in a regular envelope, you don't know if it got delivered, but this is like certified mail pretty much. So that is, I mean, all in all, obviously it sucked, but I guess that was a nice little side benefit.
Yeah. And this is something we're going to talk about, like our whole lives. We're going to bring it up randomly and like some like random story. We're talking, when we get older, we're going to like when we have kids and they're getting married, we're going to bring up the story and annoy them with it. Like overall, it's like stupid things you don't think about, but they happen and they're funny. So I just kind of want to go over just real quick shipping considerations. If you are mailing something with a stamp, the max weight is 13 ounces. And I believe each ounce is 1 stamp. The max dimensions is 6 inches by 11 inches by 1/4 inch thick. And it has to be able to bend, right? If the thing can't bend at all, and if it just stays flat, they will not machine read it. Or if they do, like it might get like dinged up and screwed up. Standard invites are 5 by 7 inches, and they fall cleanly within this. Chris, I believe your save the dates were 5 by 7 as well. I know ours were. Or yeah. I think yours were a little bigger, maybe.
It fell right within that zone, so like we had no problem sending them out standardized mail.
Yeah. So, doing this makes it easy.
I have one additional question.
Yeah.
You had this lovely gold wax seal on there. Was that already done ahead of time, or did you have to do that?
Oh my God, this guy was just a freaking magician. Everything was just folded up beautifully for us. They were all in their envelopes and everything. So like we did nothing. We literally just had to like pick them up and mail them.
Got it.
Yeah, no. He just put it all together. Like honestly, like, okay, just talk about prices. Besides the fact that we have to pay $5 to ship each one, what we got was definitely cheaper than if we had to go through like the Zola or not and designing the same thing. You know, it just took a little bit more time because you work with a designer, right? But like again, if you want to make something more unique, look overseas. Shipping nowhere near as expensive as I thought it was going to be. Zero language barrier. You know, like it doesn't hurt.
It's very cool. It's a very interesting tip. I don't think a lot of people would think about that, but I mean, having seen them in person, it was beautifully done. And it was, yeah, I think we said you should definitely be framing that. And I think you said you're going to. So yeah, you absolutely should.
100%. After I'm done using it as a fan in Greece, you know, I'm definitely going to frame it.
Yeah. And I was laughing throughout that story, obviously, because I knew what happened. And obviously I received them and I heard you tell the story already. But it's just laughing because it's just the stuff you don't think about and you don't plan for. It's, you know, that's wedding planning for you.
Like, exactly. These are like, and I know we talked about during the budget thing, like the one thing that like I was completely in the dark about is just stationery budget. And I'm just going to tell you right now, if you can afford to put like 2-3K in your stationery budget, you will be all the better for it because there's just little things that always pop up. Like if you want to print menus, that's going to cost you a couple of bucks per menu. If you want to print out a seating chart, that's going to cost you some money. If you want to print out this and that, there's always like little things you got to print out, and they all will cost you a couple of bucks each. And if you have 150 people, you got to do it 150x for each thing you want to add.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know we're getting a little long on time here, so I just want to maybe quickly go over a few things like you mentioned there. Like obviously think about programs for during the wedding. If you want to have like a timeline and a rundown of events, you know, that's something you're going to have. Potentially have reserved cards for any family members that are in the wedding or the wedding party, you know, that might be sitting in the first couple rows. You want to make sure they have reserved cards that you might need. You might have different signage for that, but it's something that you might have. Escort cards, so people know like where they're sitting. And typically this is also important for your caterer too, because a lot of times they'll have like a little symbol on them for whatever dish they decided to have. So like, you know, a little sticker of a cow or a pig or I don't know, a tomato or something for vegetarian. And then another thing that you might not think about, but also you plan on receiving gifts, whether they are actual physical gifts or cash gifts. So you're going to want to make sure that you are sending thank you cards to anyone who attended the wedding and also, you know, gave you a gift. So, you know, you could get those customized too, or, you know, go generic, but again, it's just going to add to the overall wedding budget. Some of those things. Oh, and another thing, like a welcome sign. So whether you're doing a welcome wedding sign, and there's a lot of elaborate ones, there's a lot of simple ones, but something you also need to consider.
Yeah, and these are all little things that you expect to be at a wedding and like you don't think about, but if they're not there, they will be obvious, right? Like if there's no welcome sign to your wedding, like you should have one, but it's still a cost. It's going to be there. You will see it. And it will cost money, right? So just, yeah, Chris, this whole thing.
This is a hidden budget sink, right? This is, I think, you know, in our budget episode, you know, and something that we did to make sure that we would be coming under budget was we tried to like add 25% to everything, right? That we thought things would cost so that we would always be kind of like under the budget so that we would hit our number. But there's always going to be unforeseen things, stuff you forgot about, or, you know, as you get deeper into the wedding planning where you're like, oh, this thing that I didn't think was important to me, I actually really want it to look really, really nice. And so I want to spend the extra money to make it really, really nice. And so, you know, you kind of get inspiration as you move through the process too.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. You don't know everything that's out there, so you don't know if something you like or not until all of a sudden Instagram, you know, feeds you this beautiful thing. You're like, oh my God, I have to have this. So yeah, give yourself some buffer. Add more into the stationery than you think you need because like this adds up because you can't just buy one of whatever this is. You know, you have to buy like 100 sets of it, 30 sets of it, 50 sets of it.
Yeah. I mean, I would say, I mean, minimum, real minimum, depending on how you did things. Unless you went all digital, but like, if you go through even a website like Paperless Post, right? Like you are paying per email that you send out, right?
Ooh,
You can
Chris,
also
paperless post. Actually, really good thing you brought this up. I know we didn't talk about it, but that is another option. And like you mentioned, paperless post is just an email invite. So if you've ever gotten an email and it like opens up like a invitation through your email, that's paperless post. And I'm trying to remember. Each email is like a certain amount of credits, I think, and you get like
I think a
15
credit
free
system
or
that you pay
something.
for is you buy like bulk credits and then you can like spend those to send emails. So again, what I like about paperless post is that you're able to see who opened the email, who like actually received it. Did you get any bounce backs? Did they actually open it up? Did they accept? Et cetera, et cetera. So you're able to like track that, which is really, really nice. But just know like it's going to cost you per email. So, I mean, I guess you could just do like a mail merge yourself and go real low key on it, but you don't get all that extra information on whether they opened it or not. And obviously just like it's a nice delivery system. It's kind of like a little like semi-animated and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So again, you could go real low key on the stationery, but I think you're looking at a minimum of maybe like 500. But I would say average is probably going to be closer to around $1,000, depending on how much design, like how much you care about the design, and how elegant you want it to look. But that would be kind of what I would say is like average, like low end 500, probably like $1,000 kind of average, maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, if you have at least 100 people, I would honestly budget at least $2,000 for just all paper goods, outside of just invites, because that will add up.
Yep.
Oh,
cool.
Man,
Chris, any other
is...
closing thoughts? I hope some healing has been done on this episode. I hope you're able to get it out, and obviously, again, part of our podcast's mission is to share the things we wish we have done differently. So I don't know if you would done it differently, but because now you have a great story, and again, they look amazing.
Thank you.
But yeah,
honestly, maybe I would have gone with the 450 gram paper. I'm kind of curious how thick that would have been. But yeah, I honestly like. I'm glad we went this route. It's a funny story. It's a fun story. We have something unique, at least. But yeah, stationery. Final words. It's going to cost you more than you think. Very quickly, it's going to cost you more than you think.
Cool. Well, next episode, as you heard us talk a lot on this episode, we mentioned wedding websites. So stay tuned as we walk you through those.
Perfect, Chris. And with that, we will see you next week. Chris, talk to you soon.
Thanks, everybody.